Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that today likely is just about Nintendo because today is an emergency episode. Ding, 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 ding. That wasn't an alarm. That was a bell sound. I don't know. Anyways, doesn't matter. This is a bonus little episode for the Nintendo Direct that happened today on March 27th. I'm hoping to get this out on the same day. It might not be until the day after, so you might be watching this on Friday the 28th, or you may be watching it on Thursday the 27th. Or I guess if you're from the future, hello, you may be watching this in 2037. I don't know. If your name is John and you're watching this on September 13th, 2027, hello to you. But anyways, so moving on, let's talk about the Nintendo Direct. Now, of course, this Nintendo Direct wasn't anything too important. There wasn't a ton that happened, but there's enough stuff, and I don't want to talk about it next week because next week we're talking about the actual Switch 2 presentation. So instead, I've decided to make a whole little bonus episode where we just talk about the Nintendo Direct, and we're just gonna hop right into it. I'm gonna go in order of all of the games released. Probably about all, yeah, I'll probably talk about every single one, and to some extent, I probably won't get all the way into some of them. And I'll basically share my thoughts if I have any, or I might just name drop them and move on. So, the Nintendo Direct. Actually, let's first of all talk about the context of this Direct. Of course, this is going to be the last Nintendo Switch 1 Direct. I would have expected this to be in February, and I wasn't expecting a Direct in February, but I thought there was a chance. And we did not get one. And it's a little strange because these rumors started coming out on, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday. People were saying that there was going to be a Switch 1 Direct in March. And there were a few problems with that for me. I was like, first of all, the Switch 2 presentation was in just over a week at that point. And also, the other problem was that March was almost done. So why would they do a Switch 1 presentation, and when would they do the Switch 1 presentation? A direct, not a presentation. It seemed very strange to me, and it still is strange to me. I still don't understand exactly why they did it. I think this would have been a better February thing, or earlier in March, right? But anyways, it happened, and I'm not upset about it. But yeah, just last night, especially, I was seeing a lot of stuff about it, and then boom, Nintendo dropped the reveal of it. And of course, this Direct was the first one in a while that didn't say there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor. It instead said there will be no updates on the Nintendo Switch 2. Which, yeah, there weren't really any updates on the Switch 2, but I think the reason they said that is because a lot of these things will come to Switch 2. Likely, just about everything here will be on Switch 2, and obviously all of it will be playable in some way, at least that's what they've implied, based on the Switch 2 reveal back in January. So the first thing in this Direct, it opens up, and the first thing we see is the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. So this was announced, I think, at the Game Awards. I could be wrong. Maybe it was Summer Games. No, I think it was the Game Awards. Yeah. Yeah, they announced this at the Game Awards, I'm pretty sure. They announced the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remake. Of course, we were coming off of the Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake that came out back in October, I want to say. And I think that is on Switch, as far as I know. And then they announced the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake, which I always found strange because if they were going to remake 1 and 2 and 3, why didn't they put out 1 and 2 first before 3? Like, it never made sense to me. But, you know, they're remaking them, and that's great because I've been playing a lot of RPGs lately, and Dragon Quest is one of the series that I want to play, and so it's really nice that these remakes are coming out, right? And so I was, like, elated to see that Dragon Quest 1 and 2, the 2D HD 2D remake, was coming out on Switch or Switch 2, probably both, I'm guessing, since it's in this Direct. So that's really exciting. I'm very happy about that because I will definitely be playing that. I probably won't pick it up on launch. I'll probably wait and see after a few weeks, see like how people are saying it is on Switch 2, and then maybe I'll pick it up if it seems good. If it doesn't, then I guess maybe I'll just buy it on PS5 instead. I'm assuming it'll run fine and stuff, but I just want to make sure. So, yes, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. These are, of course, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 were originally Dragon Warrior back on NES. So they're now being HD 2D remade. Of course, the HD 2D style that Square Enix has done a lot lately, you know, with like Octopath Traveler, and they did the Live Alive remake, and they did some other things. I don't know. There's a lot of HD 2D stuff at this point. So Dragon Quest is getting that same treatment. You know, they had Dragon Quest 3 last year. Now we've got 1 and 2 coming out, and I hope they keep going. I think there was what 5 or 6 of them on the NES and Super Nintendo. So I hope they do them all. I hope they do all of those ones at least. That would be great because then I could totally play through some of the old Dragon Quest games. Because unlike Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest has been re-released less often. So there's not a whole lot of places where you could play these old Dragon Quest games until now that they're remaking them. So this is obviously very exciting. Dragon Quest is like kind of one of the first RPGs. I mean, you had really, I think like Ultima was kind of the first JRPG, and then well, it wasn't even from Japan, but it's the first of that category. And then Dragon Quest was really the first to do a lot of the modern things, and then you had Final Fantasy after that. But yes, Dragon Quest. Very excited about Dragon Quest, and I think it's one of the highlights of this presentation. And it was a good thing for them to open with. I do find this weird, however, that this wasn't in the Switch 2 presentation. Maybe they just ran out of space for the Switch 2 presentation. They had to put this in another direct, but maybe that's just wishful thinking, right? But I would have thought this would have been a pretty big thing to put in the Switch 2 presentation because it kind of like shows. Presumably, this is coming out on Switch 2 as well, and presumably it'll be day and date with the PS5 version. And so that's exciting because it means third parties are coming out on the Switch 2, and they're coming out at the same time as PS5. And of course, we saw this at the start of Switch, and then as the Switch generation started continued, we saw less and less third party stuff coming out. And hopefully, we're not seeing the same situation here with Switch 2. Hopefully, we'll see third parties the entire generation. And this is definitely a good, strong start. Of course, I'm sure we'll see more third party stuff in the presentation. But just to see stuff like this in the direct beforehand is exciting as well. Then we had No Sleep for Kanamne Date. Am I saying that right? Obviously not. But No Sleep for Kaname Date. Which is from AI the Somnium Files. This is like a spin-off, I think. I don't really know. Honestly, I am not the authority for this game. I have absolutely no idea what this is, to be honest with you. Um, so this looks like some sort of puzzly thing coming out on Switch, probably Switch 2 as well, by Spike Chunsoft. That's kind of cool, I guess. There was the Raidu Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army, which is like a action RPG. The combat almost looks a little bit Xenobladey. I actually don't know when this game came out originally. Let's see, PS2 it was a PS2 game. It was an Atlas game, and now Atlas is remaking it, which is cool. You know, that's neat to see that. Atlas, Atlas. I haven't played a lot of Atlas games. I'm working on Persona, right? But I do want to play like Astral Chain and stuff. So Atlas has done a lot of support for Nintendo lately, and I'm happy to see that they are continuing that support. I believe this remake is probably coming out elsewhere as well, but to see it on Switch is nice. I don't know if I'll necessarily play it. I'm definitely more interested than I am for the Kanamne Date or whatever. But yeah, the Raidu stuff. I don't know much about it. It looks mildly interesting. And then, of course, the next thing, this is one that I'll talk about with a bit more length. We have Shadow Labyrinth. So, of course, Shadow Labyrinth was first unveiled. I don't know if it had its name at that point yet, but it was first shown at the Game Awards. And I don't know if I've told the story of me hearing about this for the first time at the Game Awards or not. But I was watching the Game Awards, and it came up, and I saw it was a Metroidvania, and I was like, okay, and I was watching it, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, is that Pac-Man? Like following the character, and I was like, wait a minute, and so I think this is probably a similar reaction to what everybody else had. But yeah, back in December when the Game Awards were happening, I was very surprised, and I guess in a way somewhat excited about the Shadow Labyrinth game. And yeah, I mean, it's really cool that Nintendo was able to get the release of the information and stuff on this. Makes me think that it might be a pretty big deal on like Switch 2 or something, right? Of course, this is like the horror Pac-Man Metroidvania for those who don't know, by Namco, obviously Bandai Namco. It's coming out on July 18th. It's pretty close to my birthday. My birthday is July 8th. If anybody wants to buy it for me, it's much appreciated. I'm kidding. I don't know if I'll actually end up buying this or not. If I do, I'm sure it'll be on like Switch 2 or maybe on PS5 instead. Not on original Switch, but Yeah, it seems like a neat Metroidvania. I do want to play other Metroidvanias first. I want to finish all the Metroid games before I get into Shadow Labyrinth or any of that. Um, so Shadow Labyrinth seems like a cool thing. I would say it's nice to hear more about this game. It's another big third-party thing. Hopefully, we'll hear a little bit about it, or at least see it in the presentation in 6 days, because I think this could be a pretty big thing to help with Switch 2. To be like, if we're to come out day and date, I think a lot of people will play it on Switch 2 because it's a new console. Then there were the Patapon games. I don't really know anything about the Patapon games, other than their Namco like rhythm games, as far as I know. They actually seem mildly interesting. Of course, they are overshadowed greatly by another rhythm game that's coming out. We'll talk about that pretty soon here. But yes, Patapon. I don't know much of anything about Patapon. It does look okay-ish. I don't know. It almost looks like a mobile game that I knew someone who used to play it, called Battle Cats. I don't know if anyone's ever played Battle Cats. I haven't myself, but just from the look of it, it almost looks like that, but with rhythm stuff. So that's cool. This is the first and the second game, Patapon games. Again, don't know much about Patapon. I probably won't play this, but I don't know if it's like super cheap or something. Maybe I'll try it. Probably not though. The next thing was Story of Seasons. When I saw this, I thought it could be like some, not like Animal Crossing, but I kind of expected it was going to be like some, like, honestly, Tomodachi Life crossed my mind when it was first coming in on like the trees and stuff. And then we saw the characters, and I was like, oh, this is Harvest Moon, and then it wasn't. It was Story of Seasons. But I mean, there's similar things. I'm not I'm not into any of these kind of games. I've never played any of them. I guess I did technically start Harvest Moon on Super Nintendo through the Switch Online. I played like 5 minutes, and I was like, this is weird. Um, I do intend to maybe try that again at some point, maybe the 64 one. But I want to play Stardew Valley at some point. It just seems like something that's really long, and I'm not really sure that I'll get a ton out of it. But I'll probably try it at some point. This Story of Seasons, I believe this is a new one, right? This isn't like a remake or anything. This is a new Story of Seasons games. What I do know is Harvest Moon used to be the series back in the day that a lot of people went to for the farming stuff. And then Harvest Moon got bought, and the games apparently turned terrible. And so later on, the same people that made Harvest Moon then started making Story of Seasons games, which were more similar to the old Harvest Moon stuff. And so, I mean, that's cool, whatever. I guess Harvest Moon sucks now and Story of Seasons is good. That's the rumor. Um, but yeah, I mean, another one of those, I'll take it. That's fine. But this was greatly overshadowed by the next reveal. The next reveal, of course, being Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Now, Metroid Prime 4. Of course, we heard about this back in June, which was great because we hadn't heard about it like for 10 years almost prior to that, or at least in any length. Metroid Prime 4 is evidently not the launch game for Switch 2, which is good. I was concerned because as far as potential launch games for Switch 2, the rumors were that it was either going to be just Mario Kart, which my opinion on Mario Kart is that Mario Kart is a game that everybody that buys a Nintendo console has to buy, but nobody buys a console to play it, right? They buy a console and then they buy Mario Kart, but they never buy a console specifically for Mario Kart. It just got to be an extra little thing on the side. And so Mario Kart 9, I don't think it can sell. Or I think it can sell. I don't think it can sell a console. I don't think Mario Kart 9 is going to be a good launch title, if that's the launch title. And I was of the same opinion of Metroid Prime 4, right? Metroid Prime 4, Metroid is a big series for Nintendo, kind of ish, but it's nowhere near as big as Mario or Zelda. And there's millions and millions of people that buy Mario and Zelda that don't buy Metroid because they just don't care about Metroid. Unfortunate as it is, Metroid is a good. Metroid games are good, right? But Metroid is just not something that can launch a console, I don't think. And so to see it in this presentation does make me think that it's not going to be the launch title and it'll be like a holiday thing this year. And 3D Mario will be the launch title. It's my guess. I'm hoping it's not Mario Kart. I'm really hoping it's 3D Mario. I will actually be very upset if it's Mario Kart and not 3D Mario. But we'll have to see. I'm sure I'll talk about that a lot more next time around. I'm kind of short on time today, so I'm kind of rushing through things, as you can probably tell. But I'm really trying to get this out to have a little bit of coverage on the presentation. And I might talk about some things from this presentation a little bit more next episode, while we're also talking about the Switch 2 presentation. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about Metroid Prime 4. I am not like the Metroid authority. I've only played a few of the games. I'm still only partway through Metroid Prime 1. I got a little stuck. And I just haven't been playing as many games because I've been doing some other things lately. So I need to get back into it. And I will probably beat that game probably sometime in the next month or so. Um, I'm a little concerned as well with Metroid Prime 4. I'm actually a little concerned that we aren't going to get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered. Otherwise, I would have thought that we would have seen the Metroid Prime 4 trailer, and then at the end, they would have been like, oh, also, Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are available on the eShop or something. Or Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are coming out next month, or they're coming out in 3 months, or anything, right? But no, instead, there was no mention of the Metroid Prime 2 and 3, and that does make me believe that we might actually not get those remakes of Metroid Prime 2 and 3. I don't know. Maybe we still will. Maybe we'll hear about them in April. But it seems a little weird that they would talk about this and not mention those two games at all. Other than that, Metroid Prime 4, I was looking at it and I was like, yeah, this looks a lot like Metroid Prime 1, which I guess makes sense, right? Um, but I don't know if it looks like the other two. I'm sure it probably does because I've never played the other two. And I'm looking at the game and I'm like, it looks pretty good, right? But I almost think they might be running the Switch version instead of the Switch 2 version because it doesn't look like that good. I don't know. I could see it being a Switch 2 version. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how good the Switch 2 is actually going to look. So if it's a Switch 2 version, then that means the Switch 2 is not as impressive as people are saying. If it's a Switch 1 version, then that means the Switch 2 is going to be really impressive because the Switch 1 version already looks pretty good. Personally, though, like I said, I don't really care too much about visuals. As long as it looks better than the last console, that's fine by me. Um, and I do like the new suit that they showed off, where Metroid, or I should say Samus, is in like a more like purple pinkish color with a purple visor. It's like a slightly different suit. Um, that's cool. Any change in the suit, fine by me. Um, And then, of course, they had this stuff at the end, that little reveal that I have no idea what it means because I haven't played the games. So, I don't know. But yes, Metro Prime 4, they didn't give an actual release date, which is not ideal. I kind of wish they would have, but at the same time, I understand, and I'm sure they probably will in April give us a release date. Um, so, we'll have to hear more about that in April. There were all the rumors that they weren't going to talk about Metroid Prime 4 in the presentation, and I think those are probably true now. But I think they might at least mention it and give us a release date for it. The next game was far less exciting than Metroid Prime 4. It was Disney Villains Cursed Cafe, which, sounds just as bad as you can probably imagine. I mean, it's just like this little, like, I don't know. It's like one of those things that you would have seen on, like, Cool Math Games back in the day, right? Where it was like, you gotta, like, serve up the right item, and it's like, I don't know. It really doesn't seem interesting in the slightest. The next thing was Witchbrook, little RPG. I am not entirely sure what's going on with this. It almost looks like a mobile game, to be honest, but it's RPG-ish. And I'll say the game looks great. This pixel art looks great. Um, it looks like a little online thing as well. So it seems interesting. I personally, again, I'm probably not going to play it. I'm not going to play the Disney Villains thing either. But yeah, Witchbrook looks really nice. It's a Chucklefish indie. Of course, a lot of the Chucklefish indies have a lot of the same art styles and stuff. I mean, that's cool. Next up, we have the Eternal Life of Goldman from THQ Nordic. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this either. But this is it looks like some sort of like a puzzle platformer Metroidvania kind of things, just upgrades on your like cane. And they showed the part of he's like an old dude, and they showed him on his cane hopping across some like worm like enemies. And I was just thinking the entire time, I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like Donkey Kong Country Returns, or not Returns, Tropical Freeze, which I know seems weird. But it's Cranky Kong, when you were using Cranky Kong on Donkey Kong's back, right? It looked like that, when he's using the cane. Because of course, Cranky Kong, you can like bounce off his cane on the ground, or you can bounce off enemies and stuff. And the mechanic there with bouncing off the enemies looked a lot like that. So I don't know. I thought that was a funny thing. The next thing was the Gradius collection. Of course, Gradius being old arcade games from back in the day. The Gradius collection, there was also Salamander in here as well, and there's a new Salamander. Um, so that's cool. I don't know, the Gradius collection, I think it's just going to be like a standalone release. Of course, Gradius back in the day was a Konami thing. But yes, Gradius, Salamander in a collection. Pretty cool. Personally, not going to play them, but they look like fun games. And it's kind of cool that they have Salamander 3 as a new thing added to this to kind of like sweeten the deal. Next up was Rift of the Necrodancer, which is a little rhythm game. Of course, there was Crypt of the Necrodancer. Now there's Rift of the Necrodancer. So this is like a little Necrodancer series we've got going on here. And this is a rhythm game. It makes me think of the mobile game ads where it's like the Magic Piano ads or something. Where you've got, or just like Guitar Hero, right? Where there's like three things and there's three different like buttons and you have to like line them up. It's a pretty basic rhythm game from the looks of things. And the idea is it seems that you can play like actual songs from your life and stuff on here, which is like cool and all. Again, I'm not super into rhythm games or anything. There is a rhythm game in this direct that I might try. The next thing was another Bandai Namco thing. So this direct was really just the direct of Bandai Namco and of rhythm games. And it's funny because Metroid Prime 4 was originally supposed to be developed by Bandai Namco, and then later on it got moved to Retro Studios. So imagine Metroid Prime 4 did end up getting made by Bandai Namco. This direct would have been like almost all Bandai Namco. But we'll take the Bandai Namco support if we can get it. And it says Tamagotchi Plaza. And it's funny because we have Tomodachi Life, which we'll talk about later, and then there's Tamagotchi Plaza. And for some reason, I was always getting those confused. They're very similar words, Tamagotchi and Tomodachi. It's Tamagotchi and Tomodachi. Those those are the two words. I don't know what those words mean in Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. But this is a plaza. Tamagotchi Plaza does not seem like the most appealing things. It seemed like a very kiddie little, like, I don't know, like cafe-y, one of those like kind of games you would see. Like another like a mobile game, right? This is the mode where you're like brushing people's teeth. That seems like the kind of thing you'd see in a mobile game. Personally, a lot of the stuff in this direct, not interested in the slightest. But it is cool to see that we're still getting support for the Switch, even this late in its life, and there's definitely some cool things still. The next kind of big thing was Pokemon Legends ZA, which again we're assuming is a cross-gen release. I think they've actually even confirmed that, so that's cool. And it said available late 2025, so it's looking like late 2025 is going to be pretty stacked on games, which is good. Of course, I never played. Well, really, I haven't played hardly any Pokemon. But I never played Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I was kind of thinking of playing Arceus ahead of Legends, and maybe playing Legends later. Or sorry, I say Legends. They're both Legends, but ahead of ZA. But honestly, I'm probably not going to play ZA at launch. I'm probably just going to play Arceus on Switch 2 and then play Legends ZA at some other point. So I probably will play this game eventually, but it's probably not something I'll play anytime soon. And I'm not going to like get into the trailer and talk about it much because I know nothing about Pokemon. I am not the Pokemon guy. I'm not the authority on Pokemon. The next thing I was quite excited about, and I'm sure lots of other people are even more excited than me, but the next thing was Rhythm Heaven Groove. Of course, Rhythm Heaven being the series that started on Game Boy Advance and kind of died on 3DS, I want to say. So Rhythm Heaven, there was also Rhythm Thief, not Thief. There was Rhythm Thief. But yes, Rhythm Heaven, or I guess maybe it started on DS. I don't know. It was like a DS 3DS thing, I want to say. And Rhythm Heaven is the the latest series that Nintendo is reviving. Nintendo's always been one to revive series, whether it's Kid Icarus or Advance Wars or nowadays it's Rhythm Heaven. So that's really cool to see another old Nintendo series revived. because we don't tend to see a ton of Nintendo series die nowadays. I feel like more get revived than die. So in theory, we've always got more games coming out, which is cool. I'm actually thinking of picking up Rhythm Heaven Groove because I've never played Rhythm Heaven, and I think this would be a good one to jump in on. There is part of me that's like, yeah, this kind of would have been a better Switch 2 thing, but at the same time, if they want something for the end of Switch 1, something as small as Rhythm Heaven really could be the thing. And everybody's already got Switch 1. And this isn't something that needs the extra power from Switch 2. So you can still play it on Switch 2. So, like, I could see this being a good Switch 1 thing as well. This is coming out not till 2026, though. So we're hearing about this a little earlier, which is cool. The next thing in the direct was probably the thing that people are talking about the most. I guess maybe that in Metroid Prime 4. It is the virtual game cards. So this is not like a game. This is like a little thing Nintendo's come up with. And the idea is it seems that you can buy a digital game, and instead of a digital game, you can buy a virtual game card, which really is just a digital game. And it's a physical game, but digitally, which is kind of already what digital games were to begin with. I took this as another excuse to not have to have physical games, and so this is just another way of them, moving them away. Because, one of the big things for a while there was like, yeah, physical games are still good because you can give them to people when you're done with them. Well, now you can do that with digital games too. And so, at the same time, I do want digital games to get better, right? But I'm always going to want my physical games because I'm a collector. So I still don't like the system of virtual game cards. I'll probably talk about it more next week. I'll kind of hear some other opinions on it and stuff, kind of know more what I'm talking about, and then come back next week to talk about it a little bit. Um, but yes, what it seems to me is that you can buy digital games and you can move the digital game cards around between two of your own systems or between systems that are linked together with like a Nintendo Switch Online family account. Um, and so I think that's a neat idea, right? If you've got two people in the house with, two different switches in the house, you can move them around, maybe like my sister's got a Switch, right? Maybe I want to move over Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword so she can play it. Maybe she wants to move over Spyro Reignited Trilogy so I can play it, something like that, right? It's a cool idea. I think it would be even cooler if a physical game came with a virtual game card and you could do the same thing there, and have a digital copy on other platforms. But I could see why they wouldn't do that, because it would incentivize physical games, and they wouldn't want to do that. So yeah, the virtual game cards. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a neat idea, I suppose. And a lot of people are talking about it as the wave of the future. And yeah, it may very well end up being a big thing in the future. Um, so it's cool to see Nintendo innovating as always. But personally, I'm not terribly interested in the virtual game card idea. Then we got a little highlight reel, not highlight reel, like a little reel of games that we get like in every direct. There was High on Life, which seemed like I don't know, some shooter, but it seemed not like an online shooter, but more um, like a single player thing. There was Star Overdrive, which originally I thought was like Sunset Overdrive, and maybe that's what they were going for with you like skating on water and stuff. Maybe they were trying to buy off that. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't quite look the same as like Sunset Overdrive. It looks very different. These are all little indie things. There's the Wandering Village from Stray Farm Studio, which is just another farming game. It looks like. King of Meat, which looks very much like a Fall Guys or like a Stumble Guys, or like a Blankos, one of those kind of things. And Luz Lagoon was an interesting single player looking thing. Luz Lagoon actually is probably the best looking thing out of all of these things. And then there was Fantasy Life I. Fantasy Life I think was first announced a while ago. Like I want to say it was like early last year. Maybe it was even 2023 still when that was announced. I don't know much about Fantasy Life, but it's cool. The next thing was something I actually do care about once again. That is Saga Frontier Remastered, or Saga Frontier 2, I should say, Remastered. So the Saga games are another RPG series that I want to play through. So the more remasters and stuff we can get of JRPGs, the better. So just another Square Enix thing getting remastered. That's great, and it looks like a good remaster too. I don't know exactly where this falls in the list of Saga games. Obviously, it's not the first one because otherwise I wouldn't say 2 in it, would it? Um, so I have to play other Saga games first, but I will probably play this remaster at some point. I hope it comes physically, but I'm not betting on it. I'm guessing it's going to be like a digital only thing, especially since it's came out today, like it's already out. So it'll probably just be a digital only thing, which sucks, but if it's cheap, I might buy it anyway. Then we have Monumental Adventures, or sorry, Monument Valley. Not Monumental Adventures. We have Monument Valley. I've heard of these games before. They're like puzzle games. A lot of people like them. I've never played them. They actually do look pretty exciting, though. And now they have Monument Valley 3 is a new game that comes out. Um, again, never played these things. They look interesting. I could see myself playing these at some point. The next thing was a golf game, not a Mario Golf game, just a regular old golf game. Originally, when I saw it, I thought it was Panga Golf from back on Wii. That was a who made that? Was it Capcom that made Panga Golf? I don't know. There was a golf game back on Wii that my parents had, and they loved it. And when I saw this, I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this Panga Golf again?" But no, it is not. It is Everybody Golf, which is a totally different thing. But it's the same like animated, art style golf game. It's probably one of those things where it's probably more in depth than like Mario Golf, but it doesn't have the IPs. It's just just a little golf game. I don't even know who made this. Who made this? Oh, Bandai Namco. Who would have thought, right? Everything in this direct was Bandai Namco. Like seriously, Nintendo went to Bandai Namco and they're like, "Hey, you got any games? We got to make a direct." And Bandai Namco was like, "Sure." Um, the next thing we got Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Of course, I am a Marvel fan. I am not a beat 'em up fan though. Is one. So this is a Marvel beat 'em up that's coming out, and it's like I think you can play with two people or you can play with two characters as one player. And there's like special abilities based on different team ups and stuff you can have. Neat concept. Probably won't play it because I'm not a beat 'em up guy. But yeah, it's cool. And then, of course, the next thing is another reveal that was kind of getting everybody excited. Um, it fades into a game, and there's these trees on a beach. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this really an Animal Crossing game? Are they really talking about an Animal Crossing game? And no, it was Tomodachi Life, which is pretty cool. I've never played a Tomodachi Life, or I guess I should say really the only Tomodachi Life, which was back on 3DS. I've never played Tomodachi Life myself, so I'm interested to. I don't know. I probably won't try this one out, but I might at some point. I don't really know much about Tamagotchi Life, but I know a lot of people will be very happy about this because a lot of people have been asking for Tamagotchi Life to come out on Switch. And so this isn't quite the same, but it's a new game instead, which could be better, could be worse, just depending on who you are, right? But yes, I think that's really cool. And it's another big thing from this direct. And the last thing, we saw Miyamoto come out, and I was like, oh my gosh, Miyamoto, right? Every time we see Miyamoto, I freak out because I think there's going to be some new Mario thing. Actually, I did not think there was going to be a Mario thing. When we saw Miyamoto, I expected the Zelda cast list. That's what I expected, the Zelda movie cast list. But instead, we got a new Nintendo app. We don't get a ton of apps, but we did have Nintendo Music not long ago. And this time, it is Nintendo Today, which is like a little Nintendo news app. It seems like it's just Nintendo posting news. It's not anybody else. But yes, it's like Nintendo makes a little daily post about news, which is a cool idea. Cool idea, and it has a little calendar built in and stuff as well. And it said it was going to be available later today, so I've been checking, and I still haven't found it. I'm sure it's probably going to be out by the time this episode comes out. So you guys will have tried it out, and I will not have, but I will have my thoughts on that next week, I'm sure. And that was it for the Nintendo Direct. So it was a short Nintendo Direct. There wasn't a ton happening, but there were a couple big things. It was surprisingly big, considering the time at which we are in. And it really makes me think that the Switch 2 presentation is going to be packed. If all this stuff had to be in a different Direct, maybe it's going to be a really packed Switch 2 presentation, which is exciting for sure. Yeah, I mean, the highlights for me are definitely Metroid Prime 4, and I guess Saga Remastered, and Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I guess Rhythm Heaven is also pretty cool. So there's definitely some good stuff here. There's also some stuff that really I don't couldn't care any less about. But that's okay, you know? The more games on Switch, the better, right? And presumably a lot of this stuff will be on Switch too, probably almost all of it, so that's even better. And some of these things I'll definitely try out. I'll have more thoughts on this next week when we talk about the Switch 2 presentation, which is going to be on Thursday, not on Wednesday. We're talking about it on Thursday, the day after the Switch 2 presentation, which is a week from today, not a week from yesterday. So I will see you all then. But yes, like I said, this was going to be a short thing where I just kind of briefly go through some thoughts on it. I will have more thoughts on all these things next week, but I'm short on time today, and I still wanted to get a little bonus thing out for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Not Just Nintendo. You can email the show with any thoughts on this direct, which I will read out on the next presentation. On the next, sorry, not the next presentation, the next week of the podcast. That email is at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. NOTJUSTNINTENDO, all one word, at gmail.com. You can email that email with any questions you have, and I will answer them, or any comments, and I will respond to them. So feel free to do that, and I will see you all in a week to talk about the Switch 2 presentation. That is in 6 days. I am thrilled. I could not be any more excited for this presentation. So, I'll see you all then. Goodbye.